My wife invited me to a business dinner with one of her foreign clients. She had no idea I spoke their language. I stayed quiet, smiled, and pretended I didn't understand a word. Then I heard her say something about me that made my hands tremble. I couldn't believe what my own wife was saying. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now let's dive into today's story. Ethan Holloway had learned early that stability was the currency of trust. His father had told him that on his wedding day, standing in the small church parking lot while guests filtered inside, marriage isn't about fireworks, son. It's about showing up. The old man had adjusted his tie, squinting against the June sun. Every single day. That's what matters. Ethan had believed him then. He still did, in a way. Cedar Bluff, Missouri, sprawled along the western edge of the state like an afterthought, where the land flattened into endless fields and the river cut a lazy path through limestone bluffs. The town had one stoplight, 2 churches, and a gas station that doubled as a grocery store on Sundays. People here knew each other's business before it happened. Trucks rumbled down Main Street with friendly honks. Neighbors waved from porches. News traveled faster than weather. Ethan was 41 now, though some mornings he felt older. He worked in supply operations for Midwest Regional Distribution, a company that moved goods nobody thought about until they weren't there. Printer paper, industrial cleaning supplies, replacement parts for machinery that kept factories running. Nothing glamorous, nothing that made cocktail party conversation. But it paid the bills on time, and that mattered. His wife, Claire, handled international sales support for a manufacturing firm based out of Kansas City. She worked remotely most days from the small office they'd converted from a spare bedroom, her voice drifting through the house in confident tones as she managed clients across time zones. She liked words like synergy and global footprint and strategic expansion. Words that sounded important. Words that meant reaching for something bigger than what they had. Ethan preferred simpler language. Paid in full. Fixed. Done. Their marriage had the appearance of function. Sunday dinners at Claire's parents' house, where her father held court about local politics and her mother fussed over whether the roast was too dry. Birthdays remembered with cards and thoughtful gifts. Anniversary dinners at the same Italian place on the county line. No screaming matches. No thrown dishes. No dramatic exits. Just distance. The kind that crept in so slowly you didn't notice until you were standing on opposite sides of a room that used to feel smaller. Claire moved through their house like a guest in her own life, always heading somewhere else. Her suitcase lived half-packed in the closet. Her laptop stayed open on the kitchen counter. Ethan had stopped asking about her day years ago, not out of malice, but because her answers had become variations of the same theme. Busy, complicated, nothing he'd understand. He'd accepted it. That was what you did in a marriage. You accepted. The afternoon it started to unravel was a Thursday in late September. Ethan had come home from work to find Claire in the kitchen, her phone pressed between her shoulder and ear while she chopped vegetables with precise, distracted movements. She'd waved at him absently, still talking in rapid French to whoever was on the other end. When she hung up, she'd turned to him with that smile she used for business. Professional. Measured. I'm meeting a French client tonight, she said, scraping carrots into a bowl. It would help if you came. Ethan set his keys on the counter. What kind of help? Just presence. Support. She rinsed the knife under the faucet. He's visiting to finalize a contract. Taking him to dinner shows respect. Do I need to talk? Claire laughed, a bright sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. He only speaks French. You can smile and nod. That's enough. Ethan nodded slowly. He'd never told Claire about his grandmother. Rose Holloway had been born in Quebec, raised in Montreal, married an American trucker, and moved south to Missouri when she was 23. She taught Ethan French on summer afternoons when he was young, sitting on her porch with lemonade and old books, making him repeat phrases until his accent smoothed. Écoute, mon petit. Listen carefully. He wasn't fluent. His vocabulary had gaps, and his grammar turned clumsy in complicated conversations. But he understood far more than he spoke. He'd learned early that letting people underestimate you sometimes gave you room to see what they'd otherwise hide. What time? He asked. 7. The place near the river. Or something nice. She kissed his cheek quickly and disappeared upstairs. Ethan stood in the kitchen, listening to her footsteps overhead, and felt something settle in his chest. Not suspicion exactly, just attention. The kind you paid when things didn't quite line up. The restaurant sat wedged between the river and the old railroad tracks, a renovated warehouse with exposed brick walls and industrial lighting that tried too hard to feel sophisticated. Ethan had been there once before, years ago, for someone's retirement party. He remembered dim corners and uncomfortable chairs and wine that cost too much. They arrived at 6:55. Claire checked her makeup in the car mirror, adjusted her necklace, smoothed her dress. "Let me do the talking," she said, not looking at him. "Just be pleasant." "I can manage pleasant," Ethan said. Inside, the hostess led them to a corner table near the back where the brick walls met in an angle that created the illusion of privacy. The lighting was low, amber-toned. A candle flickered between empty place settings. Jazz played softly from hidden speakers, the kind of music that was meant to fill silence without demanding attention. The French client arrived 10 minutes late. Luc Moreau was younger than Ethan expected. Mid-30s, maybe, with styled dark hair and a tailored suit that looked European in ways Ethan couldn't quite name. Expensive, deliberate. He kissed Claire on both cheeks when he reached the table. Too long, too familiar. His hands lingered on her shoulders. Then he glanced at Ethan, extended a hand. "Enchante." Ethan shook it. "Likewise." Luc barely held eye contact before turning back to Claire. They sat, and immediately their conversation shifted into French, rapid and comfortable, leaving Ethan to study the menu and pretend invisibility came naturally. Claire ordered wine, a Bordeaux that Luc approved with a small nod. The waiter brought it quickly, poured 3 glasses, disappeared. At first, they talked business. Ethan caught words he recognized. Contract, delay, delays, livraison, delivery. Standard client conversation, the kind Claire had 100 times. Then Luc leaned closer. He said something quietly, and Claire laughed. Really laughed, the way she used to when they first dated, before marriage became routine. Ethan sipped his wine. Watched. "Il n'y comprend rien," Claire said. "He doesn't understand anything." Her voice carried that casual confidence people used when they thought they were safe. "I me fait confiance completement." He trusts me completely. Ethan's hand tightened around the glass stem. Luc asked something, his voice lower. Ethan couldn't catch all of it, but he heard the important word. "Après?" After? Claire answered smoothly. "Après le divorce, je serai libre." After the divorce, I'll be free. She took a sip of wine. "L'argent est déjà en mouvement." The money is already moving. The restaurant sounds faded. The jazz, the murmured conversations from other tables, the clink of silverware, all of it became distant, muffled, like Ethan was underwater. Luc leaned back, studying her. "Et Louis? And him?" Claire shrugged. The gesture was elegant, dismissive. "Il survivra. Sa famille l'aidera. Ils le font toujours." He'll survive. His family will help him. They always do. She said it like discussing the weather. Like mentioning the forecast called for rain. Ethan forced himself to breathe evenly, to keep his expression neutral, to lift his glass and drink as if nothing had shifted beneath him. The rest of dinner passed in fragments. Claire and Luc continued talking, their conversation drifting into logistics and timing that Ethan didn't try to follow completely. He ate the steak he'd ordered without tasting it, nodded when Claire glanced his way, smiled when Luc made what seemed to be a joke. But in his mind, he replayed her words. "He trusts me completely. After the divorce, I'll be free. The money is already moving." When they finally left the restaurant, Luc kissed Claire goodbye the same way he'd greeted her. Too long, too familiar. He shook Ethan's hand without really looking at him. "Safe flight," Ethan said in English. Luc smiled. "Merci," Claire hummed on the drive home. Some tune Ethan didn't recognize, light and meandering. She talked about her parents visiting next month, about finally repainting the guest room, that awful beige color her mother kept complaining about maybe getting new curtains for the living room. Ethan drove with both hands on the wheel. "Watch the road," Said very little. You were quiet tonight, Claire said eventually. Didn't have much to contribute. I know it's boring when you can't follow the conversation. She patted his knee. I appreciate you coming anyway. The touch felt foreign, calculated. At home, she kissed his cheek in the hallway, the same quick, habitual gesture she'd used for years, and headed upstairs. Ethan heard the bathroom door close. Water running. Her nightly routine, predictable as clockwork. He stood in the kitchen, staring at the refrigerator. Someone stuck an old photo there with a magnet shaped like Missouri. 4th of July, maybe 3 years ago. Ethan, Claire, her sister Kate, his parents standing around a grill in his parents' backyard. Everyone smiling. His father holding tongs like a conductor's baton. His mother mid-laugh at something Kate had said. Everyone unaware. Ethan pulled the photo free, studied it. Claire's arm around his waist. His hand on her shoulder. They looked happy. They looked like people who had a future. He put the photo in a drawer. Then he sat at the kitchen table in the dark and let himself feel it. Not anger. Not yet. Just the cold, settling weight of knowledge. The kind that changed everything and nothing simultaneously. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister Marlene. Kids asleep finally. You survived dinner? He typed back, yeah. Talk tomorrow? Always. Ethan set the phone down. Upstairs, he heard the shower turn off. Claire moving around the bedroom. Normal sounds. Normal night. Except nothing was normal anymore. And a strange thing was, part of him had known. Not the specifics. Not the French client, or the divorce plans, or the money already moving to places he didn't know. But the distance. The way she looked through him instead of at him. The way their marriage had become a performance neither of them believed in anymore. He'd just been too decent to say out loud. Too trusting. Iomi fake confiance completement. Ethan sat in the dark kitchen until well past midnight, listening to his wife sleep in the room they'd shared for 15 years, and felt something end. Not with noise or drama or confrontation. Just quietly, like a door closing somewhere far away. Ethan didn't explode. That wasn't his nature. His father had taught him that control mattered more than reaction, that a man who kept his head while others lost theirs usually walked away with better outcomes. So he didn't confront Claire at breakfast, didn't demand explanations or throw her words back at her in accusatory French. He watched. In the days following that dinner, Ethan paid attention the way he'd learned to pay attention at work, systematically, thoroughly, looking for patterns in what seemed like chaos. Supply chain management had taught him that problems usually announced themselves early if you knew where to look. Delayed shipments, inconsistent invoices, small discrepancies that pointed to larger failures. Marriage, he discovered, operated on similar principles. Claire stayed late at work more often. 3 nights that week, she texted him around 5, saying she had calls with European clients. Time zones made scheduling difficult. She'd grab something to eat on the way home. When she did come home, she went straight to the office upstairs, her laptop open, her phone within constant reach. She took calls outside now, even in October cold. Ethan would see her through the window, pacing the back deck in her coat, phone pressed to her ear, breath visible in the evening air. When she came back inside, she'd smile and say it was work. Always work. Her phone never left her hand. She carried it to the bathroom, to the kitchen, kept it face down on the nightstand while she slept. When it buzzed, she'd glance at it with an expression Ethan had learned to recognize. That slight tension around her eyes, the quick assessment of whether to answer now or later. He didn't ask. Asking would reveal he'd noticed. Instead, Ethan checked their shared finances. Not dramatically, just routine review, the kind he'd done quarterly for years. They had a joint checking account for household expenses, separate savings, a retirement fund. Normal setup. Except now, there were accounts he didn't recognize. Small ones, open in the past 6 months. Claire's name only. Nothing illegal about it. Married people could have separate accounts. But the pattern bothered him. Money transferred in, transferred out. Amounts that looked temporary, but left residue. He made screenshots, saved them to a flash drive he kept in his truck. On Sunday, he called his sister. Marlene was 3 years older, divorced for 5 years, raising 2 kids on a teacher's salary and sheer determination. She lived 40 minutes away in a town slightly bigger than Cedar Bluff, in a house that always smelled like coffee and homework. She'd never liked Claire much, though she'd been polite about it. Too polished, she'd said once. Like she's always selling something. Ethan met her for lunch at a diner off the highway. Marlene ordered coffee and pie, raised an eyebrow when he just got coffee. "You don't eat pie anymore?" she asked. "Not hungry. That bad." He told her. Not everything. Just enough. The dinner. The French conversation. What he'd understood. What he'd found in their finances. Marlene listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from surprise to something harder. When he finished, she sat back, stirred sugar into her coffee with deliberate slowness. "She's planning her exit," she said finally. "And she's counting on you staying decent." That stung because it was true, because Ethan knew himself well enough to recognize his patterns. He avoided conflict, gave people benefit of doubt, assumed good intentions until proven otherwise. Claire had married a decent man and was betting he'd stay decent while she dismantled their life. "What are you going to do?" Marlene asked. "I don't know yet. Don't let her take you apart, Ethan. She's had time to prepare. You're just catching up." Marlene pushed the pie toward him. "Eat something. You look like hell." He ate the pie. It tasted like cardboard, but he finished it anyway because Marlene was watching him with that older sister concern that demanded compliance. "You need a lawyer," she said. "Eventually." Not eventually. Soon. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through contacts. "Remember Amy Brennan? She handled my divorce. She's tough. Doesn't let people get walked over. I'm not ready for that yet." "When you are." Marlene wrote the name on napkin, slid it across the table. "Don't wait too long. People who plan ahead usually win." Ethan folded the napkin, put in his wallet. 2 weeks later, Claire's parents invited them for dinner. Her father, Dale, was a retired insurance agent who still wore dress shirts to casual gatherings, who believed handshakes meant something and a man's word was binding. Her mother, Patricia, taught piano lessons and worried publicly about everything while privately running the household with military precision. They lived in a brick ranch house on 2 acres outside town, the kind of property that suggested modest success and careful planning. The dining room table could seat 12. The china came out for every occasion. Patricia made pot roast the same way every time, following a recipe her mother had given her 40 years ago. Ethan had always liked them. They'd been kind to him, welcoming, treated him like family. It made what he knew now feel worse somehow, that he'd have to watch their daughter perform and say nothing. Dale met them at the door, shook Ethan's hand firmly. "Good to see you, son. Come in, come in." Patricia hugged Claire, held her at arm's length to study her outfit. "You look wonderful, honey. Is that new?" "Got last month," Claire said, spinning slightly. "You like it?" "Very professional." They gathered in the living room first, the ritual unchanged in 15 years. Dale poured bourbon for himself, and Ethan wine for the women. They talked about weather, the highway construction, Dale's golf game, Patricia's latest piano student who had perfect pitch but no discipline. Claire sat beside Ethan on the couch, her hand resting on his knee. The same casual intimacy she performed 1,000 times. He let it happen, aware of its weight, its purpose. At dinner, Dale carved the roast while Patricia passed dishes around the table. Mashed potatoes, green beans, homemade rolls that steamed when you broke them open. The conversation shifted to Claire's work. "They're talking about promoting her," Dale said, pride obvious in his voice. "International accounts manager. Big step up." Claire demurred with practiced modesty. "It's not official yet, but it will be," Patricia said. "You've worked so hard for this." "We're very proud," Dale added, raising his glass. To Claire, they all drank. Ethan watched Claire accept the praise with gracious smiles, watched her parents beam at their successful daughter, and felt the gap between appearance and reality stretch wider. Dale turned to him. "And how's the supply business, Ethan?" "Steady," Ethan said. "Nothing dramatic. Steady is good. Reliable. That matters." "It does," Ethan agreed. Later, as Patricia brought out apple pie and ice cream, she asked about their plans. "Have you two thought more about buying a bigger house? This promotion might be the right time." Claire squeezed Ethan's knee under the table. "We discussed it. The market's good right now, Dale said. Interest rates won't stay this low forever. We'll see, Ethan said. We're comfortable where we are. Claire's hand tightened. Brief, then released. The rest of dinner passed in variations of the same themes. Family, success, future plans spoken about like they existed. When they finally left, Patricia hugged them both at the door. Don't be strangers. Never, Claire promised. In the car, Claire was quiet for the first mile. Then she said, You've been distant lately. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. I'm tired. Tired from what? Work. Life. The usual. She studied him in the dark car, her face half lit by passing streetlights. Is something wrong? No, Ethan said. He said it easily, calmly, because he'd learned from watching her that lies worked best when delivered with complete conviction. Everything's fine. She accepted that answer because she always had. Because she needed him to be fine, uncomplicated, easy to predict. It suited whatever plan she'd made. Ethan drove them home through the October night, past farms and dark fields and houses lit up with ordinary lives, and felt himself changing. Not into someone angry or vengeful, just into someone who'd stopped trusting what he couldn't verify. Someone who'd learned to pay attention. The separation of assets happened gradually, legally, without drama. Ethan didn't move money in suspicious ways or hide resources in complicated trusts. He just created clarity where there'd been assumptions. He opened his own checking account, redirected his paycheck, moved half of their joint savings into his name, exactly half documented fair. He made copies of every financial document they had, mortgage papers, tax returns, insurance policies, investment statements. Organized them chronologically in a folder he kept in his truck's glove compartment. He documented conversations in a small notebook. Not recordings. He wasn't comfortable with that. Just notes, dates, times. Who said what? Where? Claire's increasingly frequent business trips. Her late nights. Her phone calls taken outside in the cold. No secret accounts. No tricks. Just systematic protection against someone who'd been planning this longer than he'd known. At work, Ethan stayed focused. He showed up early, left late, handled his responsibilities with the same steady competence he'd always brought to the job. His boss commented on his recent promotion recommendations, said Ethan had proven himself reliable. Might be time for more responsibility. Ethan thanked him. Accepted. Reliability, he'd learned, was its own kind of power. He started going to the gym 3 mornings a week. Nothing intense, just movement. Time away from the house, from Claire's increasingly elaborate routine of absences and excuses. He'd lift weights, run on the treadmill, shower there instead of at home. Created space. Marlene texted him most days. How you holding up? Fine, he'd reply. One day at a time. That's all you can do. Claire believed she was the organized one in their marriage. The planner. The one who thought ahead while Ethan just showed up and did his job. She'd built her life around that assumption. Had probably told Luke about her practical, predictable husband who wouldn't see anything coming. She was wrong. Ethan wasn't flashy, wasn't dramatic, but he'd spent 20 years managing supply chains, anticipating problems, creating contingencies, protecting assets. He understood systems, understood how things fell apart when key elements failed. He applied the same principles to his marriage. By mid-November, he had everything documented. Financial records organized, timeline established, evidence gathered without breaking a single law or crossing any ethical line. Just facts, clear, verifiable facts. And he waited, because the thing about being underestimated was that you got to choose your moment. You got to see everything coming while they still thought you were standing in the dark. Ethan had learned patience from his grandmother. Les Bonds shows his viennet, suka savana she told him. Good things come to those who know how to wait. He was waiting, but not for good things. For clarity. For the right moment to step out of the role Claire had written for him and into the truth both of them had been avoiding. That moment came sooner than he expected. Luke Morrow returned to Cedar Bluff in late November. Claire didn't mention it to Ethan this time. She said she had a late client call, would work from the home office, maybe order takeout. Ethan said that was fine. He'd grab dinner with a guy from work. He didn't. He went to the gym, lifted weights for an hour, sat in his truck afterward, engine running against the cold, and waited for whatever came next. It came at 8:32 that evening in the form of an email to his phone, a notification sound he'd heard 1,000 times. He almost ignored it. Work stuff could wait until morning. But something made him look. The sender was Luke Moreau. The email was addressed to Claire. Ethan's address was CC'd. He opened it. It was in French. Of course it was. Claire. J. Pinskane News Devriens Accelera le Calendrier. Les choses avancent plus vite que prévu et il serait prudent de finaliser les arrangements avant les vacances. News devons weiter tout, sympathy inutile, de la part de la famille pendant cette période. Plus nous agissons rapidement. Plus le processus sera propre pour nous deux. A bientôt, Luke. Ethan read it twice, slowly, making sure he understood. I think we should accelerate the timeline. Things are moving faster than expected, and it would be wise to finalize arrangements before the holidays. We need to avoid any unnecessary sympathy from family during this period. The faster we move, the cleaner the process will be for both of us. He sat in the dark truck, phone glowing in his hand, and felt something settle. Not surprise. Not really. Just confirmation. Then he did something he'd been preparing for without fully realizing it. He opened a reply. Kept it short. Calm. In French. Luke. J'ai tout compris le premier soir. Ethan. Translation. I understood everything from the first night. He hit send before he could overthink it. 5 minutes later, Claire's phone rang. He could tell from inside the house. Even from a driveway, he saw the office light turn on upstairs, saw her shadow moving quickly past the window. Ethan sat there for another 10 minutes. Let her panic. Let her try to figure out what to do now that the foundation of her plan had cracked. Then he went inside. Claire was standing at the kitchen counter when he walked in, her phone clutched in one hand. Her face was pale, makeup perfect as always, but something in her eyes looked caught. You speak French, she said. Not a question. A statement. An accusation. Enough, Ethan said. He set his keys on the counter, same place he always did. Routine. Normal. My grandmother taught me. You never told me. You never asked. Claire's jaw tightened. She set the phone down, pressed her palms flat against the countertop. How much did you understand? At the restaurant? All of it. Her breath caught. Ethan. About the divorce. About the money you've been moving. About Luke. He said the name without inflection. Just a fact. About how I'd survive, because my family always helps me. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet. Not dramatically. Just tired tears that came from somewhere genuine, but didn't change anything. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said quietly. Ethan believed her. That was the worst part. He actually believed she meant that. Claire wasn't cruel. She just prioritized herself in ways she'd learned to justify. Needed something bigger than what they had. Convinced herself the ending would be clean if she managed it correctly. But you were going anyway, he said. She didn't deny it. Just stood there, tears tracking mascara down her cheeks, looking younger and more lost than he'd seen her in years. How long, he asked. What? How long have you been planning this? Claire wiped her face with the back of her hand. 6 months. Maybe longer. I don't know when I decided. It just became clear that we weren't. She stopped. Started again. We haven't been happy, Ethan. Not really. Not for a long time. So you planned an exit instead of talking to me. Would you have listened? We'll never know, will we? She flinched. Good. Let her feel something. Luke is just. I don't care about Luke, Ethan said. His voice stayed level. Calm. That bothered her more than shouting would have. I care that you sat across from me at dinner and discussed dismantling our marriage like it was a business transaction. I care that you counted on me being too decent to notice, too stupid to understand. I never thought you were stupid, just trusting, which is worse somehow. Claire moved toward him. Stopped when he stepped back. Can we talk about this? We are talking. I mean really talk. About what happens next. How we do this. Ethan shook his head slowly. I'm filing. Tomorrow. I've already talked to a lawyer. Her face changed. Surprise. Then calculation. Ethan, please. We can work something out that's fair for both of us. It'll be fair, he said. I'm not trying to punish you. I'm not asking for anything except what's legally mine. Half of what we built. Clean split. My parents will be disappointed. Yeah, I know. They'll take your side. Maybe. Probably not. Doesn't matter. He picked up his keys again. I'm staying at Marlene's tonight. I'll get my stuff tomorrow when you're at work. You don't have to leave. Yeah, Ethan said. I really do. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. Claire. She looked up, hopeful, like he might change his mind. I'm not doing this because I hate you, he said. I'm doing it because I won't be part of something where I don't matter, where I'm just an obstacle to manage. You matter. No, he said quietly. I don't. Not to you. Not anymore. Maybe not for a while. He left her standing in the kitchen, her phone dark on the counter, her carefully planned future cracking around her. Outside, the November air bit cold. Ethan sat in his truck, engine warming up, and felt nothing but the sharp clarity that comes from finally stopping pretending. He texted Marlene, "Can I crash on your couch tonight?" Her reply came immediately, doors open. Always. He drove through Cedar Bluff one more time, past the restaurant where it all broke, past the church where they'd married, past the house they'd bought together full of hopes neither of them could sustain, and felt lighter than he had in months. The divorce was quiet. That surprised people more than it should have. They expected drama, accusations, court battles over money and property, and who wronged whom. Instead, they got paperwork, lawyers who handled everything professionally, a settlement that divided assets fairly down the middle. No fight, no scandal, just dissolution. Claire's parents called Ethan twice, once to ask what happened, confusion heavy in Dale's voice. We thought you two were solid. So did I, Ethan said. We were wrong. The second call came from Patricia, who cried and asked if there was any way to fix it. 15 years, Ethan. That has to mean something. It did, he told her. It meant I tried. But you can't save something alone. After that, they stopped calling. He heard through Marlene that Claire had moved closer to them, rented an apartment in the next county. Luke disappeared from her life faster than she'd expected. Apparently, commitment wasn't part of his plan either. Ethan kept the house, kept his job, kept his routines. The first Sunday he lived alone, Marlene brought over dinner. Lasagna, garlic bread, salad. Her kids came too, loud and chaotic and completely uninterested in adult problems. They ate at Ethan's table, the kids arguing about a video game while Marlene poured wine. After dinner, after the kids settled in front of the TV with a movie, she sat across from him on the back deck. Cold November night. Stars visible between clouds. You okay? She asked. Ethan thought about it. Really considered the question instead of defaulting to automatic answers. Yeah, he said finally. I am. That was fast. Not really. I've been processing this since September. Had time to get used to it. Marlene sipped her wine. Most people would be angry. I was. For about a day. Then I realized being angry wouldn't change anything. He looked out at the dark yard, at the trees bare against the sky. She made her choices. I made mine. That's all. You're better than I would have been. Different, he said. Not better. Just different. They sat in comfortable silence. Inside, the kids laughed at something on TV. Normal sounds. Normal life continuing. Dad would be proud, Marlene said eventually. Of the divorce? Of how you handled it. Stayed decent. Didn't lose yourself trying to save something that was already gone. Ethan smiled slightly. Stability over fireworks. Something like that. Later, after Marlene and the kids left, after he cleaned up the dishes and locked the doors, Ethan stood in the kitchen where it had all ended. The space felt different now. Emptier in some ways. Fuller in others. He pulled out his phone. Scrolled through photos. Found the one from the 4th of July, 3 years ago. Everyone smiling, everyone unaware. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he deleted it. Not out of anger. Not out of bitterness. Just because some things belonged to the past, and he was done carrying them forward. He made coffee. Sat at the table. Opened his laptop to review work emails, but found himself thinking instead about what came next. Not fearfully. Not hopefully. Just present tense. Tomorrow. Next week. Next month. The house was quiet. His house now. His space. His rules. Ethan had learned something important. Some betrayals didn't explode. They whispered. They crept in slowly, buried in casual conversations and languages you weren't supposed to understand, hidden in smiles that meant nothing, wrapped in assumptions about who you were and what you'd tolerate. And the strongest thing you could do when you heard those whispers wasn't to fight them or match them with louder noise. It was to listen carefully, verify everything, protect yourself, and then walk away clean. Not because you were weak, not because you'd given up, but because you understood that some things couldn't be fixed, some people couldn't be trusted, and sometimes the most powerful choice was simply knowing when to stop trying. Ethan finished his coffee, closed the laptop, turned off the kitchen light. Upstairs, his bedroom, just as now, waited in the dark. Tomorrow he'd wake up early, go to the gym, head to work, live his life, without performance, without pretense, just himself. Finally,